Conditional Finality, guys, Nexas here, and welcome back to Destiny 2. And in today's video, guys, we are here with a bit of a different type of video format that I don't usually do, but with, of course, New Year's, and Happy New Year's to everybody. Hope you all have a great new year. Of course, it is tomorrow. Well, today's not reset. Oh my god, do I play this game too much? Today at midnight. Oh my god. But it is New Year's Eve and everything, and with that, it has got me thinking, what has been the best exotic in Destiny 2 of 2023? Now, when I say best exotic, I'm not talking about old ones that have gotten like a revamp, sort of like Sunshot is just insane right now. I'm talking about exotics that actually dropped within 2023. So when it comes to raid exotics, dungeon exotics, you got, of course, the seasonal exotics. Which one is going to be the best of 2023? Now, there is a ton of them. Of course, we can go through them all. We will go through them one by one, kind of based off where they are in, of course, the exotics list. So first off is going to, of course, be my baby, the sidearm meta, boys. Of course, we're going to start it off with that. The final warning. Now, this was a freaking auto-locked, sort of auto-tracking sort of sidearm. It was pretty dope and everything. I will definitely say it had some pretty cool sort of perks. And if you got into like kind of using it niche-wise, PvP, it was pretty fun, and same with PvE. It was a strong weapon too, so it did some work when it first came out. It didn't come out with a catalyst, which honestly was kind of sad, and it does have like some pretty nice looks and everything. It does have some pretty sweet ornaments, like that's pretty dope. You did get it from, of course, a questline on Neomora. But I definitely will say this was one of these exotics that came out that was super niche, super fun, sort of like the Needler from Halo or something, but it didn't really take off or anything like that. It was okay in certain builds, but you had Striga. Striga was just always beating this thing, and Striga still is freaking insane. So the final warning never really took off. As I said, it was kind of cool if you got used to it and everything PvP. But other than that, it was just one of these really niche weapons that never really hit the mark. Next, of course, we will have the Conditional Finality, another exotic. This one without a catalyst, but my good god, it doesn't need one, guys. This is an absolute banger of a shotgun. This, of course, is the raid exotic from the Root of Nightmares raid. You get it for beating Nezarec. It's a random drop chance. This thing is dope, though. Dual barrel, so it's kind of like the super shorty from Doom. First shot will do, of course, stasis damage, which can freeze things. And the second shot, if you hit most of your pellets, it will, of course, ignite things. The power calls the pellets. This thing, absolute dream. That's PvE, guys. When you brought this into PvP, the handling was nutty. And also, you could deal with barrel or freaking, what's it called, bubble titans so easily. It looks hella dope, too. This is what it originally looks like. And then you can put the ornament on it as well. But the original design is just super sick. One of the GOAT exotics that ever came out. Not even just this year, but just in general, this is legit one of the best exotics that has probably been introduced into the game. Next up is going to be the Verglas Curve itself. This was, of course, the seasonal pass exotic you could have got with Lightfall. So if you had the season pass for Lightfall, you got this at rank 1. Or if you went to free track, you got it at like rank 30 or 35. But the Verglas Curve, this was a really niche, another niche weapon. Really cool looking and everything design-wise. It was dope. It had some pretty sick ornaments as well, so you can see it looked pretty nice. It did also have a catalyst because it was, of course, a seasonal pass exotic. The catalyst did not do much to the weapon, though. It basically gave it a faster draw time if you, of course, froze a target, which obviously played into the exotic pretty well for freezing and everything. Honestly, not the worst exotic when it came to freezing if you really wanted to build into it, into a stasis build, but I will still say it definitely didn't really hit the mark with a lot of people. It was somewhat fun to use PvE, and I see some people mess around with PvP, but for the most part, Verglas Curve didn't really make much of a stamp when it first came out. It was just a kind of neat looking exotic, and that was pretty much it. Next up is, of course, going to be the Wicca Implement Scout Rifle itself. This was a season of the deep weapon. I know we're already moving to that, but this is all the kinetics, guys. We'll go back to energy. Some of them are in Lightfall. But Wicca Implement was, of course, an exotic quest. It wasn't even really a quest. It was like a hidden quest, okay? So it was like Whisper, where if you did the deep dives of Season of the Deep, which was the seasonal activity, you could, of course, find the Wicca Implement if you get to a high enough tier and everything. It was a really cool exotic mission, I will say that. Like, to find this in the deep dives was super, super fun. The Wicca Implement itself, though, this, when it first came out, I thought it was really dope in terms of the creeping attrition, rapidly, of course, slowing targets on precision hits. That was a really cool mechanic. But they definitely played it safe with this weapon because the exotic functionality of it in terms of the Teething Harvest, which is up here, it didn't really flow well PvP and PvE as well. It wasn't exactly amazing. And then it did have a catalyst as well, which you could, of course, get. Originally did overflow the magazine and shard pickups. Now, granted, they did improve the catalyst a couple of patches ago, so it gave it headstone, which is what everybody kind of wanted in the first place. But again, it didn't really improve the weapon's overall standing in terms of being good, because mainly it was a 180, which is already a struggling scout rifle, but also they needed to give it a bit more oomph in PvE. In PvP, okay, it's a scout rifle and everything. It was kind of fun. As I said, slowing is great. But PvE, it definitely left a lot to be desired. Next up is going to be the Navigator Trace Rifle itself. And I will say, this is one of these exotics that was actually really, really dope, okay? It's a strong trace rifle, which at the time was the original first version of it, the only one you could get. The Navigator itself as well, I will say, nowadays anyway, with a lot of strong Titan builds, this thing is actually insane because of how its exotic catalyst works. The catalyst will basically let you shoot out a grapple point, which will give you infinite grapples as long as you connect to it. So on Titans, I know hunters can kind of do that anyway with artifacts, but if you're going to go like a Synthos Titans or a Burning Ball Titan with, of course, or a Burning Fist Titan with, of course, the 1-2 punch sort of shotgun people are doing, you see all those like people wasting raid bosses. In that day and age, this thing is goated, okay, for that sort of thing. But for the general populace, and that's what I'm kind of judging this on, I'm not going to judge this on really niche endgame builds. For the general population, the Navigator itself, it's a really, really dope exotic. I do think it's up there with being some of the best exotics we've had, especially because it does give you woven mail as well, and you can give your allies woven mail, so you can really do that sort of support feel if you really want to go full support. Maybe if you want to go, like, as I said, Solar Warlock, and you want to get Benevolence Dawn going, so you're healing people constantly, you're giving them woven mail constantly. Really, really dope. Woven mail on any other subclass, as I said, it's just an insane buff, a same defense buff. The Navigator was a really, really cool exotic, and as I said, it does look actually really nice with its ornaments and everything. It's the Tex Machina sort of ornaments and stuff. And I will say as well, it was a really fun dungeon to get this. This was, of course, from the Season of the Deep Dungeon. It's just overall a really, really dope exotic. So Navigator definitely is going to be up there in the list and being one of the best from 2023. Next up is going to be the Necrochasm Dungeon Raid, guys. It's a raid, okay? In D1, it felt like a dungeon. It was a raid in D1, but in D2, it's come back as a reprise raid. And of course, Necrochasm is what you do get from this. Now, this is a really dope weapon, Necrochasm. Oh my god, is this thing a banger. PvP, it can definitely go in. I will still say that it's not going to be everybody's cup of tea, and not everyone's going to have it, first of all, because it's a raid weapon, but not everyone's going to love a PvP, but if you liked auto rifles, Necrochasm was the thing for you. It basically had its own Desperation, which was basically Desperado with a Curse Troll effect. And it also did, of course, have its own Catalyst. Now, the Catalyst basically just gave it Outlaw. Necrochasm was really, really dope. And ornament-wise, of course, it did look pretty sick, especially with the Siva. Oh, my God, as I said. We are counting ornaments in the list as well. This definitely just added up a little bit more because, oh my God, this thing is an absolute beauty. And last but not least, of course, in the kinetic slot is going to be the Wishkeeper combat bow. Now, Wishkeeper itself, I know we haven't really seen the full potential because people are talking about different sort of catalysts you can kind of get on it. But I will say that at the moment, it is kind of fun and it can definitely do well. And, well, it's not really catalyst, it's more crafting. But you can craft out some great perks on it as well. But I will still say Wishkeeper, it is definitely going to be more of a util bow. I wouldn't say this is going to be a bow where you're slaying out with a PvP and then PvE. It's more just really for suspending targets. And don't get me wrong, it does what it does really, really well. And it looks hella dope, I'm not gonna lie. It looks absolutely sick, and then the ornament looks even sicker. I mean, this thing is a beautiful strong bow. But I will still say the Wishkeeper itself, it doesn't really hit the height of other weapons in terms of just like, if you use this, it's gonna absolutely slay. Or it's just like, oh my god, this thing is just nutty, what you can do. It's great for suspending and everything. It's great for all that sort of jazz. And also with the extra perks, it can do work. But I will still say that it doesn't really hit all the marks you kind of want it to. Suspending is great and everything. PvP, it can be okay as well. But PvE, there is just other ways. You could just use other weapons. Other exotics are just a little bit better. As I said, you got Wish Ender, which is so good for barrier champs and also doing super good damage. But it's definitely just like an okay-ish exotic that came out. Moving on to, of course, our energy exotics. And the Vexcalibur is going to be the first one that is going to, of course, come up. So the Vexcalibur itself, this was an exotic glaive we, of course, got from a mission, which was honestly a really, really dope exotic mission. I mean, exotic missions recently have been really, really sick. I'm not gonna lie, they've been so dope. But the Vexcalibur itself, this came from a really dope one. And it is a glaive, of course, a void weapon. There is craftability with this one again, sort of like Wishkeeper and all those sort of other exotic mission sort of weapons. But the Vexcalibur, even with the exotic add-ons and everything, it didn't change the weapon too much. Just gave it some extra little bit of perks. The Vexcalibur itself, though, it's a really sick looking exotic. It gives me such Tron vibes as a glaive goes as well. It's just one of the really cool ones, especially when you have the ornament on it. I mean, it's a sick looking exotic. I'll give it that much. Of course, this came out in Season of Defiance. But the Caliber itself, it didn't really have too much when it came to perks and everything. I mean, it had some pretty niche one in terms of the distribution matrix, which meant that you got the overshield, of course, from blocking. It was fun and it was kind of niche, but it didn't get enough from its exotic perks to really make it or really stand out as an exotic. As I said, you could probably go in better and do more work PvP, especially with other glades like legendaries. Didn't really hit the mark at all. Next, we are going to have the Tessellation fusion rifle itself. I don't know if I should really count this one. This is one of these gray areas because this is only obtainable, of course, from doing or pre-ordering the final shape. If you wanted to, apparently you could pre-order the final shape, get the exotic, and then cancel the final shape pre-order. You get your money back, you'll have the exotic. Okay, that's one way of doing it. Don't tell anyone I told you that, guys. Don't let the Bungie lords come after me. But Tessellation itself, this was a pretty dope exotic. I don't think it was bad or anything like that. It could definitely do absolute work with especially with the bug you can kind of do with Titan barricades and whatnot with their new exotic that lets you basically throw barricades. You could basically infinitely use this property undecidable. Or not property undecidable, the property irreducible, which basically consumes your grenade to give this a really high damaging shot. But Tessellation itself, as much as it was one of these exotics that can basically be whatever it wants, this can legit change to whatever sort of damage type you want. It's definitely not used as much when you're going to use special weapons in PvE that's exotic, especially because this is in the top slot, so you got so much competition. As I said, exotics anyway. As I said, I don't know if I should have really added this because this is technically an exotic for next year realistically, and that's when it's going to get buffed when final shape comes out. But the Tessellation itself, as I said, it's one of these weapons that's in the mid sort of area. Again, it's a pretty dope exotic. It looks pretty damn sick. I mean, it's a really sick looking exotic. Not gonna lie, this thing actually looks so dope. But as I said, when it comes to being an exotic itself, it has really cool perks and everything. And Tessellation, it looks dope, and it's not, of course, in its final form. Of when it comes to final shape, it'll probably get a catalyst as well. Next up, of course, is going to be the Centrifuse auto rifle, which I will say has definitely become a lot better since it first came out, with auto rifle buffs and everything that kind of came out as well. Centrifuse, honestly, shouldn't be slept on, especially when we got some arc mods kind of going as well. The overcharge capacitor basically gave this a ton of stuff for just running around and shooting at people, and then final blows with high charge caused explosions, and maximum charge explosions blinded targets, which honestly was really cool. And what made it even more special is that once you got the catalyst, it amped it up a little bit more. When I say amp, it basically, when you were amplified, your weapon gradually got that overcharge, so you didn't have to kind of run. Because one of the things when it first came out was that you had to constantly be running to keep it going, and then when you weren't running, it was just a pain in the ass because it would just defuse. But when you're amplified now, it'll keep on going, so you can kind of keep this overcharge capacitor going. And when you do get it going with some arc mods, this gun is actually really sick. And of course, does have an ornament too, which you can see is pretty sick. I mean, I'm not gonna lie, it's a bit too yellow for me. I'm not gonna lie, it's just neon green, to be honest. But the Centrifuse itself, I will definitely put this up there with one of the best exotics from the year. I do think that it was one of the better ones. As I said, auto rifles definitely came into their own. I do think in the right build, and of course with the right setup, this thing's an absolute banger. With the right mods too, this thing can go in. So yeah, Centrifuse, this is definitely one of the best exotics from the year. It's an absolute freaking banger. Next up is, of course, going to be the Diris grenade launcher itself. This is a really dope looking exotic, so we'll go over the looks first. I mean, you cannot get more Shrexier than this. Sexy on all layers, boys. This thing is super dope. The Diris came out, of course, as the seasonal pass weapon for, of course, Season of the Witch. So the Diris itself had a catalyst and everything too. But this is what it looked like as well with the extra. It loses the kind of like pictures down the lower. But of course, it did look pretty sick and everything. This basically turned you into, of course, a hive boomer knight. So you could shoot boomer shots. It was a really sort of unique grenade launcher. And it definitely was fun to use, but I will say that this fell off so fast. This is probably one of the only seasonal exotics that fell off super fast. Other exotics, like you had, as I said, Centrifuse, you had, of course, Verglas Curve and everything. The Diris fell off legit. As soon as I used this, I don't think I ever really re-equipped it again until the catalyst came around or whatever. But basically, this weapon was, as I said, turns you into a hive boomer knife, and then this weapon enraged when dealing or taking sustained damage, and it increased the rate of fire while enraged. You did, of course, have the loyal mods as well, so final blows of the weapon created loyal mods, and then those mods obviously seek dead enemies and detonate and damage blinding targets, whatnot. It really actually did work out with the Grasp and the Hunter, that was the moth keepers. But other than that, this weapon was it just didn't really do much for you. The damage and everything wasn't great for being a special grenade launcher. It was Arc 2 in Season of the Witch, where we were kind of getting more into not really arc anyway. A lot of the mods, I'm pretty sure, were a lot more voidy and freaking strandy and everything, so we didn't really have arc mods then. And even with the catalyst, it basically made you enrage faster, which got you this corrupted nucleosynthesis going. And then, of course, it was actually really nice to get yourself amplified, because the catalyst basically had that if you got a final blow with this, you'll just be instantly amplified. So with amplified builds, it wasn't bad. But The X-Diris itself, as I said, it fell off super fast. And last but not least, we have the final energy sort of exotic from 2023, and that is going to, of course, be the Buried Bloodline, which is the brand new exotic from the brand new dungeon, Warlord's Rune. I will say, when it comes to sickness and when it comes to just like looking super dope, and of course just being a really exotic or unique looking exotic, Buried Bloodline is one of the best this year. This thing, it looks so dope. It's sort of like the X-Diris in that form where it just has such a unique look to it. It was super unique as well in the way it fired, in terms of it had the Hungering Quarrel, so double fires tracking bolts, landing bolts, leeches health from targets. It of course did have Vine Reanimation as well, so multiple final blows with this weapon grants Devour to the wielder, so Devour on any subclass was really cool as well. Plus it would have the Catalyst as well, so you can get that from the dungeon, so while if Devour is active, the weapon weakens on hit. Honestly, overall, I think the Buried Bloodline is a really sick looking exotic. Absolute freaking banger of a dungeon exotic. As I said, dungeon exotics never rarely miss. As I said, we don't talk about Hard Shadow because it's a heavy. But dungeon exotics rarely ever miss when it comes to just being super sick and actually doing work. I will still say Buried Bloodline though, as much as it is really fun, it's just one of these niche sort of weapons where you're not really going to see it too often. You're going to see people might use the PvP because it's really good for obviously range. But then you got Forerunner. And then when it comes to PvE, in certain Void builds, it will be an absolute banger. If you want to stay alive a lot, obviously leeching is great. And of course, getting Devour procced on any subclass is immense. But again, it does take that exotic slot, and it is in that secondary slot, and it is a special weapon. So ammo is basically your biggest enemy with this freaking weapon. If this was a primary, I would be saying this would be one of the best, if not the best exotics from this year. But the fact that it is a special sidearm just means that ammo economy is your biggest enemy. So it's just a niche sort of exotic right now, and there was better throughout the year that came out. There is going to be some, of course, heavy exotics that we did get from this year as well. And the first one is going to be the one from Lightfall. Again, another sort of exotic mission, a quest, which is going to be Deterministic Chaos. So this was an LMG, a Void type and everything that honestly was really sick when it first came out. I will still say though, when it comes to heavy LMGs, not many of them really do too much work. You've got things like, of course, Thunderlord, which at one stage was absolutely freaking nutty, but that was because of arc mods. But other than that, you don't really see the Deterministic Chaos too often when it comes to DPS phases and everything, or even just ag clear, because there's just better things in the game. Legendary's kind of power crept in terms of ag clear, and then when it comes to, of course, doing DPS damage, Thunderlord kind of outshines it, and also you got freaking rocket launchers and everything that do work. But Deterministic Chaos was really dope. It's actually a really cool sort of weapon in terms of it had heavy metal. So every fourth bullet became a heavy projectile that weakens targets on impact, which was really cool. And then, of course, every fourth heavy metal projectile also makes targets volatile on impact, which was Vexcalibur. So basically, every 4 shots, you were doing some absolute work with it. Really cool, sort of unique exotic. But the problem with the Deterministic Chaos, as I said, was that it just got outshined by even old exotics, okay? So as much as it was a pretty dope exotic in 2023, I do think that there was others that were probably better than it in just this year alone. And also, it did get outshunned by a lot of other exotics. Next up is going to be, of course, the Winterbite glaive itself. Another Lightfall reward you could have gotten from another exotic mission. Lightfall actually had a few exotic missions, but Winterbite itself, this was a really dope exotic. And the problem I have with this one is that if I review it when it first came out, it was a way better than it currently is. So Winterbite right now, not as bad, it can do work. But when this first came out, this was broken. Basically because there was a bug with it in terms of you could one-shot pretty much any boss. There was some bug shenanigans going on. I can't really count bugs and everything to make it better. I did the same with Tessellation. Tessellation has a bug that makes it better. It wasn't just, of course, the bug that made it absolutely insane. When you pair this with Synthos, this used to do better damage when you used to melee with it. Because it was a heavy glaive, it used to do extra increased glaive damage for melees. And when you had Synthos on, it used to increase that damage. And of course, this glaive, it doesn't waste ammo when you're meleeing it with. So when you had one bullet, you could absolutely spam the glaive or even have no ammo. This thing was a heavy weapon that could constantly be used. Now, they did patch that out as well, so it's not exactly as strong anymore, which is why it's such a shame. But I will still say, I don't think that was really a bug. I can't count on the bug to kind of make this like one of the best 23, but the Synthos build, that was just a straight up build. That was a straight up build that was really dope. So I can definitely put this as one of the best from 2023. Because of that Synthos build, this thing used to just be an absolute freaking machine. It also did have an ornament too, which made it into a freaking trident, which is just sick looking. I mean, oh my god, look wise, this thing's an absolute banger. And finally, the last exotic of 2023, the one we of course got from this season pass, which is you can get from rank 1 if you bought the premium pass, or you get from rank 35 if you have the free pass and everything. Dragon's Breath. It's glorious. I'm not gonna lie. I did not have much expectations when this came back, because in D1, when this was a thing, solar, it used to shoot basically solar grenades. It wasn't exactly amazing. They did change it around a bit, but it's never really hit the mark in D1 for me. But D2, this thing's actually an absolute banger. I love this thing. I know Gallahorn is there and people rather that, but Dragon's Breath just goes in. It's just one of these where you can shoot with it, use something else for a little bit of time, kind of like a sniper or something, or use fusion, like spam out with something else. You'll hear the insta proc reload, because this can actually insta reload basically off scorches. So you can see high octane, igniting nearby targets, partially replenishes fuel. The weapon refills itself from reserves upon gaining maximum fuel. So when you start igniting things, it basically auto reloads, and then of course you can get the catalyst on it as well, which will increase the amount of time it takes to get to maximum fuel. So it doesn't take too long at all. The catalyst actually adds on so much to this weapon. But Dragon's Breath itself, I just think that this is an absolute banger. It's really good for at the moment as well with Radiant builds, and of course with the solar mods that are currently going in. Usually every weapon struggle to become part of the meta, but Dragon's Breath is definitely, it's edging its way in there. It's probably not the meta sort of rocket you can go in with, because Gallahorn's still there and everything. There is like bait and switch sort of Apex Predators, but Dragon's Breath, oh my god, this thing can go in. I had low expectations for this, but this weapon exceeded them all. So yeah, definitely in 2023, this is one of the better exotics to go in with. So with all of those exotics kind of gone over, all my points in them, we're quickly gonna do a tiers list now. Of course, with the tier list and everything, I don't have some of the new exotics in terms of the Dragon's Breath and everything in the tier list, but we'll go through them all. So as I said, when it comes to Deterministic Chaos, not a bad weapon, everything, not a good one, but we'll instantly put that probably in around the C rank. As I said, it's definitely not the worst weapon, but it can go in. As I said, it does do pretty well. Final Warning as well. Again, it's kind of niche. It is in around the BC slot and everything. As I said, I'll probably put it C though, again, because it's a really niche weapon. It doesn't really go in too well either. Verglas Curve, I will put that at a D again. It sort of fell off, wasn't great, and exactly, it's just an okay-ish weapon. We got the, of course, Winterbite. If I'm gonna base it off what it originally was, it would obviously go to S, but I think because of what it is right now, I have to put it at A. I mean, it was fun when it first came out and everything, but at the moment, it does kind of take away from the exotic as well. So 2023 now as well, it's just a little bit lower. So now for me, it is going to be an A. When it comes, of course, to the conditional finality, it's S tier, guys. It's S tier straight away. I can legit not tell you enough how good this exotic is. For me, it's the best exotic of the year. So this would be number one if I was doing actual numbers. So I will say Conditional Finality, number one exotic from 2023. I should probably lead with that. But the conditional as well is just an absolute banger. And it's probably one of the best exotics that have ever come out in Destiny, period. As I said, it goes in multiple engagements, PvE, PvP. Absolute S tier, absolute banger of a weapon. Centrifuse itself, as I said, this is another one of these seasonal pass exotics where it's not bad and it's not too good either. I will say at the moment, in certain builds, it can be really good, but I will definitely put it more into the B slot. I don't think it's S tier or anything. It's between A or B. For me at the moment, I think it's just more of a B because it does super rely on, of course, seasonal mods to be arc. Vexcalibur itself, I will again put this toward the D slot. I think, I honestly, it might be even F. I mean, again, Verglas Curve could be F2, as said. This line is just kind of taken, but Vexcalibur itself, it's okay. It just has a niche sort of area, even with the kind of crafting you can do on it. It's okay. It's definitely not going to be anything too great as well. Necrochasm itself, I'd probably put to A. I think A is pretty fair for this. Honestly, it could be an S tier. It is that good. It could be S. I do think, though, that in the current meta and everything, it doesn't really kind of bode well or anything like that, but when it comes to the weapon itself, it's an absolute banger. And if you do like your auto rifles, it can go in really well. And I do think PvE, you can do a lot of work too. The biggest problem I have with it is that it has no elemental type. As much as kinetic weapons can do work with kinetic tremors, when they don't have kinetic tremors, they do kind of struggle. I know the arc, or the Cursed Hurl explosion is meant to be arc, but if this was like a strand or a stasis sort of weapon or whatever, this thing would have went in so much more. If they made it an energy weapon, made it arc, I do think it would have worked a lot more and it would have been S tier. Navigator itself as well, which was our Season of the Deep Dungeon exotic as well. This again is between S and A tier. Now this is very dependent on who you ask. I will put it in S if I was a freaking endgame GM sort of raid kind of soloer. I myself will put it at A, mainly because I don't think it does too much in terms of damage or whatever. It's going to be A for me though, because it definitely lets me live out that fantasy of being a solo sort of support hero. So I can basically just keep on giving people wealth and mail, some out of the subclass. I can sever targets as well to debuff other enemies. And I just think for that reason alone, it's definitely up the A tier. When it comes to the Tessellation itself, again, this is between... It'd probably be C to me. I mean, it's not bad. As I said, it can do a lot of damage. It can do absolute work. But the only way to make it effective is to make it use the bugged sort of Titan Barricade, as I said, with Strand Titan, which for me doesn't really bode well for an exotic. If it's only going to be good when it's bugged, it doesn't mean that it's going to be an absolute banger of an exotic. Diris itself, honestly, F. I'm going to leave it an F. I'm just going to leave this one an F. As I said, this fell off so fast for me. It's a super unique exotic. It looks super dope. But the biggest problem for me was legit that it just so slow. It basically did no damage. PvE, it was somewhat full, but it gets outshone by every weapon. So yeah, F is just the best place for this. Wicked Implement, for me, I would say, honestly, I'd put it in... I'll put it in D. I mean, it's a really cool looking exotic. Again, it looks super dope. I just think that even with giving a headstone, it doesn't really change the exotic too much. It's a 180, so it's in a bad archetype. It doesn't have any damage buffs going for it when you get kills or whatnot. Buried Bloodline, which is going to be denoted by a Rat King because I don't have a freaking image for it. But I honestly will put that mainly in the... I think that's a B weapon. I do think in a certain build, the fact that it gives you Devour on any subclass, absolutely god tier. And the fact that it looks super dope. And also with the catalyst, you can weaken targets for a quick shot with a special weapon. Really, really good. As I said, if this was a primary weapon, it would be straight up here or here. I'm telling you, if this was primary, it would be going in way more. This is going to be Wishkeeper, which is this hierarchy of needs because I don't have a picture. Again, it's not going to be S tier. It's got to be between A and B because it's mainly a utility weapon. But when it comes to power, I honestly think it'll be B. I think it can be okay with certain catalyst or certain different perks and everything you can get from crafting it. To be A slot, it has to do a lot more than just be a really good util weapon. I mean, it has to be doing more than just suspending. At the moment, the damage just isn't really there. All it does really do is suspend. It takes a little bit of a charge to get the suspend going. So at the moment, for me, it's a B weapon. And last but not least, we have got, of course, the Dragon's Breath, which straight for me, I think it's going to be S tier. I think Dragon's Breath is just an S tier exotic grenade launcher. The fact that it goes really well with a lot of different builds. Solar, of course, does help it out this season with, of course, Scorching and whatnot. But I do think, and Radiant and everything, but I do think that Dragon's Breath, in of itself, it's one of these S tier sort of heavy weapons. As I said, it's not as good, of course, as Gallowhorn and short DPS. But when you use this in a long sustained DPS sort of engagement, it's so nice because you can shoot it. It auto reloads itself. It scorches everything. It ignites. It also does work in terms of the catalyst. You can keep it going in terms of the maximum fuel. So, of course, it does more damage and whatnot. I just think overall, it's an absolute S tier weapon. But do let me know if you guys agree with my list. As I said, this is my list for the best exotics from 2023. Of course, Conditional Finality being S tier for me being the top slot. Let me know what you think your favorite was or your best one was, of course, from the air. Let me know if you agree. As I said, Diris is feeling pretty lonely in the F slot. Maybe some things need to go down, or maybe Diris needs to get replaced by something else. I don't know. You guys tell me what your tier list is. Or even send me links to whatever, or pictures of whatever your tier lists are on Twitter or whatnot. I'll have a look at them. But overall, this is my tier list, of course, of 2023 exotics. But regardless, if you liked the video, show us a like. Anyway, support content, subscribe, and fantastic day. And hopefully I'll see you next collective in the next one.